Good afternoon. I love the energy in the room right after lunch, so love it. Let me introduce myself. I see some faces from earlier this morning. My name is Maribel Aleman. I am an executive coach and I'm also obviously a trainer. So my focus has been around leadership, change management, communication, innovation. So I cover many, many topics, and I always like to say I grew up, quote unquote, in human resources. So I was in charge of a lot of the talent management systems and departments in the organizations I worked in. And then I shifted to my passion, which is coaching and then working in trainings. And many of the topics that I tend to focus on, they really come out of experiences that I see my clients struggling with or having a lot of successes with. And this whole idea of leadership agility, I designed literally after I had a quarter of 3 months worth of work with a client company. And as I started to think about it and work with other clients, this topic came up. The need to have leadership agility in the organizations. Before I go on though, I would love to hear from some of you in the room, what does this topic mean for you? Why is it important for you? So could I hear some voices in the room? What does leadership agility, mean to you? Why is it important to some of you?
Well, I would say the reason what it means to me is the importance of a leader or a leader being able to adapt, be flexible in their leadership style as things change in the industry or change within the organization.
So having that adaptability, that change. Thank you.
We'd like to change our corporate mindset from that's how it's always been done to being flexible as the industry changes.
I think some of our people have a one-size-fits-all approach. And I think that's where we have opportunity for improvement.
And that the whole idea, one size fits all, I want to shift to see how we can incorporate new ideas, be able to have that ability to managing people. Absolutely. It's so, I often hear that as a big challenge, whether it be that we have a whole new way of doing business. The industry is changing, so we need to make sure that not only us as leaders are able to rise up to the challenge, but my people are able to do it, right? How do I have that resilience, that agility to actually be successful? That with the one client that generated this idea, just to give you the sample of the type of discussions that we have in this type of training, they're moving to the 22nd century model of doing business around advertising, agency business. But this is an academic institution. People haven't left in 30, 35 years. People are used to doing things the way we have been doing them for 30 years. Don't move my pencil, don't move my cheese, right? So how do you actually help them make this move? The whole idea behind this particular workshop is to develop those skills. And we do start with the whole idea of what is a leadership agility mindset? Why is this important? How is your relevance to the organization going to be affected if you become agile or if you don't become agile, right? So this whole idea of relevance becomes a big part of the conversation. And then we also talk about the specific skills. Now this is a workshop where the leaders are very much challenged to get out of their comfort zone from the moment that they walk in through the door. So how do we do that? Well, we start going through the model of what is the agile mindset. So this is a quick flash, but I'm going to take it away. When you think about your organizations and the agile leaders, people that you would say, that's an agile leader in my company or organization, what are some of the characteristics that you would say they have?
Flexible.
They're flexible. What else?
Energetic.
Energetic.
Likeable.
The likable. Right? What else?
Respected.
Respected.
Able to communicate with different people of varying levels.
So there's that connection, there's that energy, maybe a little bit of inspiration. So the model goes back to how do you create those moments where you're likable, inspiring? It starts with this whole idea of trust, right? So what is it that we need to see in our leadership, agile leaders, especially if you're asking us to shift to a whole new way of doing things? What do I need to see in you? Communication, specifically how you direct people's goals, roles, the processes you're asking them to engage in. Right? So if you're asking me to all of a sudden shift or reorganize a department or a team, what are you giving me? How are you helping me? At the other side of the conversation is sometimes leaders don't have a lot to give, right? We don't have any resources, right? So go ahead and change the world without it, right? So how do you have this conversation with your people and help them feel good that this is actually going to help you succeed? Obviously, then moving into how do we resolve problems, not from the old way we used to do things, but how do we get creative around solving some of these issues? How do I make sure we have the courage to call it a problem? Because sometimes we don't want to do that, right? It's like, it's all okay. If we don't talk about it, it will go away. No, it doesn't, right? So I see some heads shaking. Right? Inspiration, motivation. The one thing that comes up in this conversation is you don't have a light switch on your people, right? So what inspires you? What inspires you? Recognition. What else?
Mutual respect.
Mutual respect. What inspires you?
I would say the same thing, respect.
Respect. Hmm? So everyone has a different response, right? So respect for you might be a very different definition than from you. What does that mean? As a leader, are you paying attention to what your team, to what your stakeholders need to be inspired and motivated? I don't know if you could see the next one is building the team. That's doing the hard work, right? So a lot of times you may have team members coming up to the leader and saying, can you fix this for me? And they go ahead and they take over and they do it, right? But then what happens next time?
You're going to ask the same question because they can't do it.
So how are you building that resiliency and skill in your team so that they can resolve the issue next time, even if it's a tough, sticky one? You don't want to be mom and dad. This line comes up a lot in this workshop. You're not mom, you're not dad, you are the leader. So how do you help people resolve their own issues and build a team so they respect each other, they motivate each other, they help each other, and then you're guiding them. And then it's a circle. You have to keep doing these things. So questions or comments around this model? The next thing we look at is, this is a lot. So this we spent probably the most of the first half of the session in. Then what we look at is the actual skills. And I call these the 4 Ds. First is discover. This is really a tough one for most individuals because this is about getting out of your comfort zone and thinking about what is going on in the organization and your team in a different way. How do you ask those questions that will generate the right solutions for you and your team when perhaps you're not used to doing that? Design is actually generating more ideas, getting others to contribute to that, making sure that they're focused around specific goals so that it's not just about building the blue sky, but how do you make something realistic? The diagnose is really about how you influence others. So you get out of your comfort zone, a new mindset to be open to ideas. You generate new ideas. Now you need to get people on board. So how do you actually diagnose what everyone needs that you need to get them moving to be as agile as you are? What is that you need to do? So you need to diagnose what does your team member need? What does your partner need? What does your management need from you? The last part is deploy. We can have all the great ideas, we can be super agile, we can spend all this time in the room together, but if you don't do something with it, it's useless, thank you. So we want them to have this sense of energy and a plan to actually move forward so they can actually put things in place. The one thing that comes up in this conversation is if you don't carry through, if you don't follow through on these ideas, on the agility that you're developing, you're actually going to deflate your team, right? So what is the plan? How can you make it realistic? So these are the skills, and what we do is we go through each skill, and they are tested through various exercises, so they actually get a feeling of what it is that they can be doing back at their own reality. So let me pause there. Questions or comments on this?
So what level leaders do you customarily require
usually mid-level, so they've had at least 3 years experience and above. So I've run it from that level all the way to the C-suite. And what I do is I obviously, depending on the audience that we're going to have in the room, the exercises get adjusted, right? So I'll share with you a couple of exercises that I shared with director level. So I know director level means different things in different organizations, but they had range of experience from 2 to 10 years in that particular group, and they had maybe from 1 direct report to 25. So there was a really quite different group. So one of the things that we look at, especially when we go back to the discover and design, we really dive into this whole idea of asking questions, right? How often do you find that your leaders actually are asking good questions? How many of you see that? Why do you shake your head no?
Because we just had a class on coaching, and this is one of the areas that they kind of had a light bulb on and stuff.
So the power of great questions. A great question is not, don't you agree you should change? Yes, right? So the laughter, how many of you have had that moment? Someone's guiding you along. Right? So agility is creating that question for yourself and the team that ignites a solution, that ignites a plan that can be completed and achieved. So in this particular example I gave you, I had them think about what are the questions that you should be asking yourself as agile leaders in this organization. And I give them a good amount of time. In this example that I'm giving you, what they came out were actually questions they were going to take back to their leadership and their teams, their direct reports, to move forward on their strategic plan. This was something that they had never done. You could see them say, we need to do more of this because these questions, we can't do our jobs without the answers, right? So part of this workshop is that they're going to take things back to their teams to implement and get some clarity on these questions. But the whole exercise is, do I spend enough time asking the type of questions that are going to help me build agility for myself and my team? So since we're asking about questions, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
The group size that you prefer to have for this type of training?
This one tends to be 16 to 18. Just because, especially if we want to have a good moment around these things. So otherwise it just becomes.
And the length usually that you prefer?
So a day.
8 hours?
Yeah.
Like a full day?
Yeah, yeah. We can divide it half and half. So half a day, half a day. It actually, if you do the mindset and the model that I shared with you earlier, you could do that the first half, and then the second half is the skill building. So I've done it that way as well.
Thank you.
So next thing is let me go back to the original. Discover, look for opportunities to build, grow, and improve current status. One of the big blockers that we start to look at in this workshop is this whole idea of confirmation bias. Right? So confirmation bias, and you have the definition there, is we search, we interpret, we favor the things that confirm our beliefs, right? So if I have a sense that, well, you don't like me. I know you don't like me. And you're not smiling at me. Oh boy, she really doesn't like me, right? So then she's smiling. What's that? You're trying to set me up, right? So we do that all the time. So as leaders, especially agile leaders, we need to learn how to recognize that our confirmation bias has been activated and also help our team members recognize that in themselves. So I got my 5-minute warning. So this is a really fascinating exercise. I make it fun. I do something with the Beatles, so don't give it away. So if we have it, but the song Strawberry Fields, you remember the rumor around it?
Sure.
Can you share with the class what the rumor was?
Paul is dead.
Paul is dead, right? So, and there's this whole thing about the album cover. There's all these visual signals that confirm that Paul is dead. And they're ridiculous now that we know different because we just went to the concert, right? And people are in disbelief. But we walked through how this actually became a huge thing that people are saying Paul is dead. So it's a real example in our culture of confirmation bias. The next thing we talk about is best manager, worst manager. It's a quick exercise, but it really touches upon them. Like, those managers that have not been agile are the ones that probably I put in that worst manager column, right? So we talk about that. And then at the very end, after we had all this conversation and looked at the skills, I asked them to develop their own leadership agility model. They have our model, they have the skills, but then I asked them, make it your own. What is the model that you're going to use from everything we have discussed with your team? Pretend you're presenting this back to the group. What are you going to say to them? So now they have to actually share with the rest of the room their own leadership agility model. And that would conclude the class, so they have an action plan that they're ready to move on.